Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Van Helsing. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we're dealing with the aftermath of the last episode. They have Violet, sketching a picture of, Julius, which was pretty dope. Obviously, Axel coming over being like, oh, that looks just like him and everything. And for her, she wanted him to be remembered. This was just as much his fight as it was hers and their ancestors, the Van Helsings and everything. So obviously, he tells her oh, you want to talk about it, which for her it's like, he's gone and he sacrificed himself for me, and I kind of have to live with that. But it's like, it's okay, you talk to me about this. But for her, she's like, okay, you want to talk? How about we talk about Scarlet? How about we talk about Vanessa? And he doesn't say anything, and she's like, I thought as much. To be fair, Axel has never been the type. He will act a little on his emotions, especially the more negative ones, like his anger and stuff like that. But he's always been the type to kind of bottle stuff up. So, obviously that Scarlet wound is not closing anytime soon, because it's still a fresh enough wound. When you actually think about it in the grand scheme of things. Because you never know fully, how much time has passed in between a lot of stuff, so... but the fact is that he's lost quite a bit. He's lost a lot of people over the course of this. Once again, you think about where we started in season 1 and where we are right now. So it's kind of crazy. Hell, just let alone all the people that died in season 1, just in general. So that's crazy just to think about. But all the people have come and gone over the course of the show. But obviously, they're being attacked by a helicopter because it literally blows up their vehicle, which I'm more than I'm wondering, because we came across 2 episodes ago a vampire version of Delta Force, so I'm wondering, are the people up there, is a Dark One just being oh, and the president's sending you these orders? I'm assuming it has to be vampires, who know, who are oh, we're after this particular target because we're trying to, get the amulet. I guess it's we'll kill them, then we'll land and take the amulet from their body. So, obviously, dodging for cover, they end up going inside of a mine, which is that's probably not the safest thing. Too many horror stories lead people into mines. It's that's probably won't end well. I even love it, obviously, partway through it, they get attacked, and actually using that catchphrase, goddamn apocalypse. And, obviously, it caves in, and so Violet and Jack get separated from Axel and Ivory. So, obviously, no ammunition, so we're going melee weapon. He's got a good old pickaxe. She's got the sword, so... But what I thought was kind of an interesting conversation was kind of what we bounced back and forth between the two groups. It starts with Axel and Ivory talking about, the love situation. Because it's he's so it's I'm sure, for you, everything's kind of heightened emotions and all. And she's like, what? It's he's kind of implying about her and Jack. And it's he knows firsthand what it's like to fall for a Van Helsing. It's they're kind of all about sacrifice, sadly. That entire bloodline is, and it just seems sadly, that repeats over and over again. And for him, it's the sting of losing Scarlet, it's when you give your all to someone like that and then lose them, it can take you to a dark place. But she's you're out of that dark place, right? And he just kind of doesn't respond. And it's no, that wound is still there. Because the sad thing is, he had his moment with Vanessa where they were to kind of clear things up a little bit, but I'm sure for him, he'd still give anything to have Vanessa around to just be to make everything 100% okay, It's just despite everything, it's he was so pissed at her, he was legitimately, whether he was going to try and kill her or not, who knows, but... He wasn't in the best place, but I kind of still in that dark place to a certain extent. I think the only thing that kind of keeps him going is, right, he found another mission. Vanessa was no longer his mission, but now Scarlet and Violet are. And it's up to him. It's we got to end this once and for all for everyone that we've lost along the way. For every person that's ever died. We got to stop the Dark One. So, but, obviously, this creature that's kind of in this cave. Because what's interesting, at first, you don't even get to get a really good look at him until, near the end of the episode, interestingly enough. Because I think it's kind of interesting circumstances. Really quickly, I should circle back to, talk about the other side of things. I only focus on, the Ivory and Axel side of things. But obviously, that relationship conversation comes up with Violet because it's right, Lee. And it's wait, who's Lee? My boyfriend. And she's oh, well... He was my boyfriend. I kind of left him behind. I thought I was doing it for his safety, but she's like, maybe I was just doing it just so that he kind of wouldn't be a distraction during the mission, because I needed to focus wholeheartedly on the mission, and I didn't want to be worried about him, you know. And at the end of the day, you have Jack being like, maybe when it's all said and done, we can you know, I can meet him, like we could all meet together and stuff like that, you know. So, because obviously it's a conversation about like finding love in this time frame and stuff like that. Obviously the whole her and Ivory situation. But really quickly, going back to it, there was all like these dead animals and stuff like that, and they're like, huh. I mean, I guess when you don't have a lot of victims, like, because there's like bears and stuff, like bear skeletons and stuff, I was like, okay. And we even see later on that it's wearing like a fur coat and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, is that something it did post becoming a vampire, or was that pre-vampire and you just kept it? Because there's a lot about those circumstances we don't know, because Jack and Violet end up finding the little girl. It turns out that vampire's her dad. But also, it's like, who knows how long they were in that cave. Like, she has a very, she's like, she says, like, one word at a time. So it's like, how long were you in here? Like, how long have you been? Because I was like, how has she been surviving? I guess maybe she's been eating animals. Part of me was like, do you think he kills some animals and she grabs whatever's left? Because I was about to say, like, maybe on some level, he's still looking out for her to a certain extent, even though he's a vampire. I mean, to be fair, maybe in the beginning he did to some extent, because obviously Axel was able to hold himself off to some extent, but maybe it's also a situation where he, maybe it's just some circumstance where it's like, maybe he did to a certain point, but then he went full feral and just stopped. Because I'm like, how did she survive this entire time? Because there were others, but I guess that's the rest of her family, but maybe, like, they died, and, like her and her dad came in here for shelter for, you know, to be safe, but ultimately they ended up, you know, being, you know, and somehow he got bit in the process and turned. So obviously Jack and Violet are saying, like, right, we're going to help you. We're going to get to him before Axel and Ivory have no choice but to kill him. And obviously she ends up snatching the necklace, because apparently, like, she has a thing for shiny stuff. I mean, I guess it's just kind of like her being a kid, and it's kind of like, well, considering she's staying in a dark, dank mine, it's the only thing to look forward to it, I guess. But at the same time, Axel and Ivory come across the rope and is like, well, I guess we're going to have to Indiana Jones this. And Ivory's like, who? And it's like, right. Because she was even being like, wait, a tourist mine? And it's like, what's this all about? It's like, this used to be the backbone of this country and stuff like that. You know, it's like, I mean, once again, it's that thing of like, right, you guys are super old and you don't know anything about like some of this stuff. You obviously were vampires and you didn't care about any of this. But yeah, Ivory makes it across and Axel's like, okay. He's like, you know, she made it look easy. Got this. Sadly, he ends up dropping the compass, which I'm like, first and foremost, it's like, that's bad for anyone that finds. I mean, granted, it's at the bottom of a pit, but you never know. It's probably going to come back. I mean, maybe it's just lost forever. But it's like, you kind of think like someone's going to find that compass, and it's going to make it easy to find Jack and Violet. I'm sure it's a proximity thing, because I was about to say, like, how do you track both of them? Like, I'm assuming, like, it'll point you to whichever one's closest. Maybe them being, well, I'm skipping around a little bit, but them being separate, maybe it makes it harder. I mean, to be fair, it's like, Axel found Jack, and he obviously Violet was out and about, but it's like he ended up finding Jack because he was looking for Vanessa. So I'm thinking, like, you know, it is 100% a proximity thing. Like, whatever Van Helsing's nearby, it points you in that general direction. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I never really thought about it before until now. But anyway, Axel almost didn't make it, but luckily he did. So. But I love the fact it's like, right, we're kind of going in a circle now. It's like, so we're just going to have to, like, trial and error this. But they end up running into the big guy. They were about to deal the final blow until, like, Jack shot, you know, Ivory. which is like, you shot me, and it's like, oh, it's like, I'm sorry, it's only because I knew you here. It's like, oh, since you choose to shoot me, that means you like me, right? But it's like, obviously, it's like, you want to save the kid's dad, but Vanessa's tried to turn feral before too, but it's like, if they're too far gone, it might not be no coming back from him. Very much like an iZombie. Because I don't remember her trying. I know she's tried it before. I don't know if it's ever. I forgot about that. Like, I think I remember those like earlier days where like, right, I don't think she's done that since season 1, has she? I think it's just kind of like a I'm not even going to bother thing. It's like, because I'm trying to think, like, in season 1, I think that is when they tried that, like, trying to heal a feral, and it just straight up died from it. I think it's been a long time. I'd actually forgotten about that. I was like, oh. I mean, but it's kind of like an iZombie, like, how once you go in full zombie, like, there's no coming back from it. You're kind of sadly better off dead, like, because you're pretty much just going to be a mindless zombie. Like, your humanity and who you were is kind of gone at that point in time. So I just thought I was like, right. So it's like, at the very least, Violet wants to try, because, you know, she owes it. This little girl deserves to kind of potentially have her dad, you know. It's also sad to think about it, too, because, like, the last time, like, well, Vanessa did try, like, granted, it's different circumstances, but the whole Dylan thing was kind of, like, still heartbreaking when you actually think about it. You're like, yeah, don't forget that happened, you know. Once again, it was experiments that made that situation what it was, but still, it's just kind of like, ugh, yikes. But they end up going toe-to-toe with him. God, that whole thing with... I don't handle that well sometimes. Like him breaking Ivory's arms and stuff like that, pushing her into the rock. Like, ugh. God, I think he broke both of her arms because she literally couldn't get up in that moment. And he's dragging Jack away. But luckily, they were, at the end of it, able to take him down and were able to save him, so... But then, at first, when I was looking at him, when it was taken off and he saw his rainforest farmer, I was like, is that who I think it is? Interestingly, that I had most recently seen that actor in Motherland Fort Salem, because I recently just watched and reviewed season 1. Go check it out if you're curious. Both the show, because I highly recommend it, and season 2 is like right around the corner, but I meant specifically my reviews. Check them out if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine too. But I was like, is that... I've seen that actor in quite a few things, and I was like, wait a minute, if it is him, and it turns out to be him, you notice even more when he's human. I'm like, that's so weird. Side note, the makeup does such a crazy job, because, like, I don't know if I ever talked about this before. The Oracle she looks so different without the makeup. Like, I don't know if I ever talked about that last season, or even this season. It's like, it's so weird when you look at her with the makeup on, because it's like, it just made her look like a completely different person. So when she's like in her like what she looked like before as Bathory instead of just like the Oracle, you're like, wow, you look like almost complete. The makeup does a lot. Because some actors, like, depending on the makeup and stuff, I guess the more feral ones, like him, like, he kind of looked a little recognizable, but I'm like, I never really thought about that before. Like, even Ivory looks like almost like a completely different person without the makeup on. It's just something, I mean, to be fair, we've seen her with the makeup on for so long, you know, so that's all you kind of associate with, but it's like, but it was kind of interesting. Side note, what's really fascinating, and the reason why I'm tripping about it so much is, like, that actor, he was in the final season of Supernatural. He was like in one episode. He played Nicole Munoz, the actress who plays Jack, because she was in Supernatural as well in the final season. That same very episode, he played her dad in that episode. I was like, wait, what is this connection? That's crazy. Once again, it's like, I shouldn't be too surprised because I've talked about it before. Even like the actress who played Doc, she popped up in Supernatural as well. I want to say it was like season 13 or 14. That was like a one episode thing, but I'm like, that's so crazy how that stuff works out like that. It's just like, huh, like I have to look into, I'm like, are you related or something? The reason why you're on the show together, is that just with like a wink and a nod, or is it just kind of like just like a happy coincidence? I'm like, oh my God, it's just crazy. Like, he literally played her dad in Supernatural. I thought that was so fascinating. But luckily they were able to reunite them. Granted, he's been a feral for so long that it's kind of like hard to talk, so at least something good came about this expedition. Obviously they're going to stay here. It's like, for them, it's like, it's safe. I guess the general area, so they can probably hunt and get food and supplies and stuff like that, but the mine is safe enough that not many people can traverse it, so probably knows their way around both of them. So I don't know if they meant specifically they're going to be staying around the mine or just the area around them, whatever the case may be. Can't really keep them with them. But at least they have each other. You know, it's like, hey, the girl's a survivor. She survived that entire time by herself. You do recognize, like, man, kids have a tendency to survive in this universe. Obviously, I sadly brought up the whole... But it's like the whole... what was that little girl, dude? That, like, every time something bad would happen, she managed to be the only survivor? I don't remember. Because the last time we saw her was in Denver at the beginning of season 4, I believe. What's the last time we saw her? When Julian saved her? That's not Julian, Julius. I wonder, did I call him Julian earlier or Julie? Because I think I did that, like, early in the show, too. Like, regardless, tangents and all that side. But, now they've got it. Well, we're back on the road again. You know, luckily everything worked out. But, you know, Axel's like, we need to split up. The fact of the matter is, things could have gone bad because of our previous expedition, in which they made a statement. No more mines, no more caves. Hell, I'm even videoing basements. So, got to keep that in mind going forward. But Axel suggested they split up because at the very least, one of them needs to make it to the Dark One. So it's like, all right, everyone kind of, you know, Jack goes with Ivory and Axel's going with Violet, which obviously, I'm curious to see kind of where their story goes, like Violet and Axel. It might be a situation, well, he talked a little bit about Scarlet with Ivory, but I'm curious if, like, things are going to, like, change with him opening up with her about it, because obviously it's like, she lost someone that was important to her. Julia's like, you know, like a good friend, you know, an ally. I mean, he was her mentor. He trained her and everything, you know, so. But before Ivory takes off, he was like, forget all the stuff I said. Basically, love fast, love hard. Like, the fact is, like, finding love is rare, and you kind of give it all you got, you know. It's better to have loved than lost type of situation. That despite everything, because that was a conversation, too. Like, would you have preferred to have never fell in love with Scarlet, knowing all the pain now? But it's like, pain or not, like, the time in this world, obviously, you know, the apocalypse and everything is limited. So when you find it, you hold on to it, you fight for it, no matter how much pain might come afterwards. You know, it's all worth it in the end, you know? So, obviously, them taking two different routes, it's like, right, the Dark One doesn't know that Jack is back yet, so you hold on to the amulet. Obviously, it's like, look after my sister, and you know, Ivory's like, you know I will. It's like, oh, this new sisterly bond, obviously, they're going their separate ways, but it is actually interesting when you actually think about it in some cases, because it's like, right, because Ivory and Violet were together for a while, and obviously Jack and Axel actually met first, so for things to kind of, to be where they are right now, it's in kind of splitting up in the way they are, it makes sense, but it's interesting. I'm curious to kind of dive into these dynamics. It's like, oh, just when you guys got back together, like last episode, now you kind of have to go your separate ways again. So the route to DC, it's definitely gonna be interesting. I find it so fascinating. It's like, right, because this is all that is left, there's no bouncing to any other characters. It's like, well, no one else is out and about. Like, Doc is gone, like, you know, and everything with her and Jolene, so Phil is going, so it's like there's no bouncing between multiple groups, because sometimes you'd be bouncing between like Vanessa and other people, but usually you stick with one group at a time in an episode. But it's like, so we're probably going to be bouncing back and forth between these two for the next 2 episodes. I mean, like we were earlier this season to a certain extent, so and maybe we'll check in with like Bathory and the Dark One and see what potentially they're up to. Maybe not, but I'm interested to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward to the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.